Alright, welcome back for another riveting evening of inserting and bending resistors, and maybe a little soldering. So I'm going to do the next part of my ErgoDash assembly tonight. And I went out in my shop and found a little bit of wood and made myself a assembly or a bending jig for my resistors tonight. So this will go a little bit faster. So, it's a little block of wood, slot in it that way, slot in it this way, and I've tested one resistor on it, basically put the resistor across it, bend the legs down, and it comes out the right width every time. So, I'm going to be using that tonight to bend all my resistors. So, let's get started. Got a whole bunch of these that all need to go in. Let's go autofocus. So I'm going to pull the strip off of this side so I don't warp these too much as I take them off. That's probably enough. We'll see. Just kind of grab them, pull them off, stack them over here. I'm not even going to count these. I'm just going to pull off about 30. And then when I get close to done, I'll grab a few more. Great. Stack of resistors. We're going to assembly line this tonight and bend all these at once. Focus. Focus. Yes, no. Okay. We're doing this the hard way again. Oh, so there we go. So I can just put this on here. Push both sides down. Bingo. Alright, in they go. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That doesn't add up. That would be 36 resistors. I have the directions up here. Let me double check these. Did I miscount? Did I get 30 instead of 31? Well, it looks like from the directions the remaining 5 here are supposed to be populated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. What does the bonus resistor do? Well, let me bend these over before I forget. These are staying in pretty well because they're just a hair wide. But I can still bend them over and make them stay very well. So I need 5 more. That's 3. 1, 2, 3. This feels like it's going faster than yesterday. I think the bending jig is the main difference. And bending them all at once, the same size, makes it go a lot faster. Alright. Let's solder. Look at that forest of wires. Giant mess. Still waiting for the iron to heat up. Alright, let's get a little bit of a tighter shot. And I'll try not to lean over the board and get my hair in the soldering shots tonight. I looked over yesterday's footage and realized, oop, can't see any of my soldering technique because all you can see is my hair. Alright, we should be good. Let's see. Does that melt solder? Yep. Wipe that off and we'll get going. Same idea as last night. Pick a spot, start soldering. Trim when there's nothing else you can reach, and repeat. As I'm doing this, I'm trying to heat the joint. Put a little bit of solder in between on the tip of the iron, but then I'm trying to touch the rest of it to the solder on the existing solder or the existing metal around the joint, rather than trying to melt all the solder against the iron. Because really, if the pad and the lead are hot enough to melt the solder will flow and stick to everything. But if the solder is only getting melted by the iron, because your iron's not hot enough or it hasn't sat there long enough, then when you take the iron away, solder won't really be sticking to much. That doesn't make a strong joint, or doesn't make a very conductive joint either. Let's do a little bit of a wider shot for a bit. Kind of see not so much what the tip of the iron is doing, but what my hands are doing in the process. I'm kind of rolling the iron so I can wipe both sides of it. I'm trying not to touch the adjacent pads when I'm soldering these new ones. Mostly because I don't want to form a solder bridge. I don't want to pull the solder from one pad across, bridge it across the circuit board accidentally. If you do accidentally reheat an existing component, not a big deal. It's got two leads. They're both holding it in. And the solder will generally stay put. Yep, I can't get to those in the middle right now, so it's time to trim the rest of these up. grab my clippers and get going. Same ideas before. I'm just going to clip all of these, kind of keeping my finger on the top of the wire so they don't jump away on me. Let me get a close look at this joint for a moment. That looks fine. Sometimes if the joints come out really smooth, the reflection can fool you into thinking there's not enough solder there. Got a stray lead here. Come on. Come on. Alright. See if I can sweep these off the edge of my desk and into my trash can. Oh, so much easier than trying to pick them all up with my fingers. Alright, so I'm going to wipe my iron because it's been sitting for a bit and solder the last 9 connections here. Alright, so the rest of those. I feel like I'm due for the camera to need a restart soon. We'll see how it goes. This part's going to be really interesting. I'm going to look at the manual, which is totally off screen. See what the next set of recommended assembly steps is. And there goes the camera. Alright, I'm back and I've got the next 4 parts laid out on the top of my workbench, so I also went and got a pair of tweezers because I'm going to need them. So we've got the backlight resistor. We've got the backlight FET, the TRRS jack, and the reset switch. So I'm just going to go through these and install them one by one. Start with this resistor. Lucky me, this is the same size as the others, so I'll just get my jig. Bam. This goes in the spot labeled BK1K. Come on, focus. Backlight 1K. And the brown, black, red color code is color code for 1K. Oh, let the iron get cold while I was reading the directions. These are going to be fun. These are our MOSFET. They're not hard. Of course, I've done my share of surface mount, so I've got some practice with them, but take it slow. They won't be hard. All right, a little warm. Solder those two. Call it a day. So our MOSFET goes here. I'm going to place it like this. I'm going to start by pre-tinning one of the pads. This is where a really fine tip helps. So I've just got a little dome of solder on there. Oh, that's maximum magnification. Alright, I have to settle for that. Actually, I'm going to move the board up so that you can watch me unpack this. I like to unpack these with my tweezers so I can got really sharp tweezers, really pokey, so I can slip them underneath here and peel the cover back, and I can dump that on the workspace. There it goes, down there somewhere. This is why you work on a very clean table. So right now this is upside down. I can pick it up like this. Come on. Do I need to go get a telephoto lens for this? Jeez. Alright. There you go. Now you can see that part. You can see it's got little legs on it. Oh, I've dropped it. Try not to do that. You'll never find it again. I will, because I've done this enough times. Whenever I drop something, I always listen to where it landed, because I can never follow it with my eyes. Alright, so there is a tiny FET. Kind of get a sense for the shape of it as I turn it over. So those three legs are going to go down like this on the board. It's going to go in the other direction. So, focus. There we go. I can grab this with my tweezers like this, flip it over and drop it. Then I can kind of push it around until it's lined up right. I can grab it like this. I can put it on the board. It'll go there, but there's solder in the way, which is kind of intentional. I'm going to come and heat up that solder with my iron. Line it up so that I can see an equal amount of the pads. Take the iron away, take the tweezers away. Now it's on there, but it's not done. I need to solder the other two sides. I'm going to rotate the board around so I've got a good angle on this. Make sure there's absolutely no crap on my iron, because this is a lot touchier. Just get just the tiniest amount of solder on there. There we go. I had a little dip of solder on my iron, and that was all it needed. I didn't have to add any more. I have a little bit of solder to the tip of my iron. I don't like how this is going. Probably can't see that very well, but it hasn't wetted. Let's get this closer and focus. Come on, come on. You can see the difference here. Between the leg on the right that's well soldered. It's got a nice fillet, you can see it comes down. The other one, all the solder is on top of the pad, on top of the leg of the part. It's not even touching the PCB. That is no good. So I'm going to get the iron back in there, and I'm not even going to add solder. I'm just going to try to touch the iron to the board and the leg at the same time, and just let the solder flow where it wants to flow. Focus. Not that you'll be able to see shit because these parts are so small and the board's too far away, but you can watch. So I can see I've got contact with the leg. Let's try to put this. Kind of pushing around the solder on top of this pad, on top of this leg. I think that's that, yeah. So I think for the rest of the, for now, we'll keep going. Next part is the jack. You can see it is actually 2 slots. It always goes on that side. Push it in, make sure it's seated. Oh, is that in there? As I solder this, I'm going to be applying a little bit of downward pressure on the board with my finger here. That should keep that part firmly seated against the board as I'm soldering. I don't think I'm going to be applying downward pressure on the board because my fingers aren't in the right places for that. You can see how that, as it goes on, at first it's not super conductive, doesn't flow, and then it starts to flow. There we go. Nice, shiny, maybe you can see that, maybe it just looks like a really shiny spot. There you go. You can see what the results look like at least. Alright, next part is our reset button. Let me double check the position on that. Focus. So from the bottom of the board, the Arduino is going to go here, where these outlines are. So the reset switch goes here. And make sure that's pushed all the way in. You can see the back legs are sort of sprung out a little bit. That'll help hold it in while it's soldering. Here we go. And you can tell this is well soldered from the top, because you can see it's a little bit of solder. It's actually flowed all the way through the hole and made it to the top side of the board, which is actually the bottom side of the board. So the next part to do is the underglow LEDs. This, when it's assembled, this will be the top, this will be the left hand, left hand, so So I need to bridge a couple of these pads up here to make this a left-hand board. So I need to connect these with some solder. Just kind of put a blob of it on there. There we go. Big blob. I need to connect the other two here with similar blob of solder. Blob there, blob there. Touch to connect. Need a little bit more. There we go. All set. And the next set of things to do are the underglow LEDs. So that'll be these LEDs. Should be these. I'm going to take a similar technique with these. How many do I need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12. I'm going to get my tweezers under here. Because this is a longer roll, I can flip this over. Pull it along and just let them flop onto the table. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. I want to make sure that I don't peel too much of this back, because the other 12 of those are going to have to stay in there for the next half of the project. I can cut this with whatever. I've got these cutters handy, so I'm going to cut it with my side cutters, but it's that, or tweezer, or scissors, or razor blade, or, you know, whatever's handy. That's done. Alright, I think I can turn these over mostly with my fingers. Kind of gonna push them into a pile on this part of the mat. Bring it here where the camera can see them. Alright, so these have corner here with a triangle on it. The board has a corner here with a triangle on it. So those are the alignment marks for this. I'm going to switch to a roll of smaller solder so I have more control over how much solder I put down, because I don't need very much for these surface mount parts. So you can see here's the solder I was using before. It's great for through-hole components because it puts out about the right amount. You don't have to be constantly reaching for your solder. Here's the solder I use for surface mount components where I need a lot less. This is a Kester .38 millimeter solder, and the other one is a Kester .8 millimeter solder. I'm not quite sure how this is going to go, soldering this down. We'll see. I think I'm going to orient the board like this. And I'm going to put a little bit of solder on this pad. There we go. Did I have too much of my head in it? Yes, it did. Still doing. Now I'm going to spin this around so I can grab it. Gotta show off my tweezers. SparkFun! They make good tools and parts and dev boards and everything. I can grab this here. I'm going to basically put it on the board, heat up this solder, and slide it in, and take the iron away. Now, they've made note that these are really incredibly a pain in the butt because they're easy to damage. So, we'll see if that's true or not. I think what I'm going to do, since I've got a few of these lined up, and that went surprisingly smoothly, I'm going to tack a few of these down and try to keep my hair out of the way so you guys can see what I'm doing. So there's just a little solder on there. It's really just enough to make a little puddle on each of those pads. And I'm left-handed, so I'm holding the iron in my left and tweezers in my right. If you were right-handed, you might be doing this the opposite way. And here I'm going to heat the solder up. I'm going to put this next to it. I'm going to slide it in and take the iron away. It limits the amount of time that I spend heating up the case of the LED. There's another one. Oh, yeah, okay, I can grab that one. Sometimes if one of these isn't in the right position, rather than trying to struggle to get it into the right position, I'll just pick a different one. Alright. Those are all attached. They're only soldered on one corner, but now they're all attached, they're all positioned. If any of them were really screwed up, this would be the time to go back and adjust them so they were a little more centered. I think actually that last one I'm going to adjust a little bit. I'm going to make sure I get a firm grip on it with the tweezers to start. There we go. Then realign it. Move my solder stand a little bit, get that in the center, and try to solder the pads on these. I try to do opposite sides of the first pad so that I don't run any risk of reheating it with the iron, because if you've got a surface mount part like this and you're not holding it, it's going to move if all of the solder connections come loose. Usually when that happens, it sticks to your iron. I'm going to get a little bit of solder. So actually, I've rolled the iron towards me maybe 90, maybe a little bit more, half a turn, something like that. I'm going to put the solder on this edge of the iron, and then I'm going to roll it back so that that solder is right on that connection. Saw that wick in. Done. Okay, that's working out pretty well. And I'm kind of carrying around a little blob of solder on the bottom of that iron. Not a lot, just a little bit. Oh, can't see those two. Okay, let's move that up. Straighten out the solder. Do that again. I'm kind of putting in the amount of solder that I think I need, and then I'm kind of watching it wick the rest of the way in. So now I'm going to turn the board around and solder the last 4 remaining pads on these. Alright, 4 down, 8 to go. Next row, I think I'm going to get a few of these lined up here. So they're in an easy orientation to grab when I want to grab one. Sometimes I have to pick them up twice. Pick them up, put them down, pick them up, put them down. Spin them a little bit, put them down again. There goes the camera. these. I'm using a relatively fine grip. Also, you can't see it on camera. I'm resting my pinky on the table to support my hand so I can have a relatively stable grip. I actually rarely rest my fingers on the board that I'm soldering. Probably because most of the boards I'm used to working on have all kinds of little pokey bits sticking out of them. And those don't make good finger rests. Alright. That is all of our backlight LEDs. What's next? Alright, next is the header for our Pro Micro. We got a big old pile of crap off screen here. Give me a moment. There we go. Got a Pro Micro with a fancy little USB header on it. There's our Pro Micro. I'm going to put that to the side for a moment because we're going to do the headers next. I think I want to put the long side of the header into the board. Pro Micro goes pins up. I don't see a reference in the manual. These headers are longer on one side than on the other. Try to decide which side the long side goes in. I think I'm going to put the long side into the board. And they're going to stick out the top side of the board a lot. And then I'm going to test fit my switch here and see how much that interferes. It doesn't. Wow. That is more efficient. Oh. See the bottom of these headers come up to the bottom of that switch? When the plate is in here, it's going to be underneath here. So the headers in this position will interfere with the plate. So I need to push those out. And then put them in the other way. We can't actually solder the Pro on yet. That's what it'll look like. Pull that off. There's this switch that sits directly above it. Yeah, now you can see that there's a lot of space between this pin and here. That's much better. That's what we're going to have to do. Okay. Let's see how this does with these headers on this mat. Kind of be a little bit careful when soldering headers like this on something that's not heat resistant, because the pins will heat up quite a bit and they may actually push into the mat. You see how much solder that takes with that pin? That thick, thin solder. Back to the thick solder. The right size solder makes a difference. Kind of putting in a little bit of solder for each of these. Not too much. Those pins are not getting too warm. I also don't see any dimples in my mat, so I'm doing okay. Unwind a little more solder. Do. All right. Those are soldered. I don't have a lot of parts left. I think the next thing is, okay, so they say to install a stabilizer. I don't have one, so I'll skip that. So now they say to install the switches and the plate. Well, I've been getting a little ahead of the game here, because I found it super satisfying to snap my switches into my plate. So I snapped all my switches into my plate, except for the ones down here that would slide around a whole bunch. And then I went and put the keycaps on to see what it would look like. I also made sure all of the pins on these are perfectly straight. Oh gosh. Okay. So perfectly straight, like this. Straight up and down. That way they'll all fit into the board. I put a few of the standoffs in too because I was checking out the fit with the back panel. So now I can bring these together. I line them up just right. Usually I'm going to start at the bottom corner. They're in. All of them. And now they get soldered. These should be interesting because they're fairly large holes. Let's see. You see that with these slots and these holes, there's a big hole and a relatively small pin. So it's going to take a lot of solder to fill up that hole. I'm going to start with this one here in the middle because it's in the middle. It's easy to see. So you can see now that it's warm, I'm actually just putting the solder on more solder. A little bit of solder there to get things started, and then I can put it on the pad and the pin on this side. Alright, that's all the switches that I was able to put in ahead of time in the plate. That's better. Alright. Three more to solder. Love it when the camera goes out right in the middle of the solder.